When roots are deep, there's no reason to fear the wind. An African proverb. Chapter 3. Broad, shallow roots don't hold in the storm.
Hi y'all, Dan here. Thanks for joining me.
I'm wondering if you'd go wandering with me through the wilderness and woods to where the winds are blowing free, through the darkness of the night, heading toward the morning light. I wonder if you'd wander with me.
The unsung heroes of the trail are the volunteer maintenance folks. These are men and women who carry heavy chainsaws, cables, chains, hooks, and other materials to clear the path for us hikers. The only payment those folks receive are the gratitude of hikers and their own satisfaction for caring for the trail that we all love. I met one of those wonderful trail maintenance volunteers after I collapsed at the top of Jacob's Ladder. His trail name was Boss. The night before, David and I pitched our tents alongside of a forest road. David is an artist. He's responsible for my Wandering Monk logo and the graphics used on my YouTube channel. David wanted to meet and hike some miles together, so we began at the Natahala Outdoor Center and enjoyed the grand climb up and away from the Knock. And then 2 days and 2 freezing nights later, we walked out of Stokoa Gap and immediately began climbing up Jacob's Ladder, a 700-foot ascent that appears to be almost vertical. I left early that morning so that I could tackle this infamous landmark without being embarrassed by onlookers, and I made it without meeting anyone or being passed by any turtles or snails that might be out for a morning stroll. My effort was rewarded by filling the need for a large oxygen bottle. With pack off and food bag out, I tried to enjoy a hot breakfast of oatmeal mixed with raisins and a cup of coffee. I'd almost recovered my breath when Boss came walking southbound on the trail. His backpack was filled with 4-foot timbers. He stopped and introduced himself as just a volunteer. Trail maintainers are some of the most humble folks I have ever met, and he exemplified that virtue. I thanked him for his dedication to the trail, and he answered how he had admired us hikers. And we talked about his background. Then David arrived. He had survived Jacob's Ladder in much better condition than me, and I was impressed. We enjoyed visiting a while before Boss continued on down the trail with his load of wood. He was putting in some steps near the top of Jacob's Ladder to prevent erosion. Boss had moved to North Carolina specifically to be near the Appalachian Trail for this purpose, for caring for the trail and supporting the hiking community. And as he shared his passion, it became evident to me that this was who he was. His personal values were on full display. His family had a history of caring for nature and others. His roots run deep into the well springs of caring for others. Boss is an inspiring man, although he would be embarrassed if he ever reads any of this. When trees fall in the forest, they seem to find the trails. Large tree trunks fall across paths and make them almost unpassable. Maintainers cut the downed trees and remove the obstacles from the pathway. It's the behind-the-scenes and almost thankless job. As we hike, we quickly become very grateful for the hard work of those volunteers. And every trail has its own way of teaching us life lessons. Blowdowns are a common scene on forest trails. Blowdowns are trees that have succumbed to nature's force and heaved up from the ground and collapsed. It seems they have an affinity for falling across the paths that hikers walk. And this can be a major annoyance or a huge obstacle. I'm amazed at the ability of a single storm to knock down huge trees that have lived for scores of years, surrounded by so many other trees. What differentiated this storm from all the other storms that had moved through this thicket? What was different about this specific tree that once stood proudly among its neighbors and now lies stretched on the ground across the way that I must pass? So many questions flood my mind each time I encounter a blowdown. On a closer inspection, the answer to the problem appears to literally rise up from the ground. Tree roots of blowdowns are pulled out of the ground like plucking carrots from the garden. They silently stare at all who pass by. The downed giant lies beside a large hole in the ground where its roots had grown together to anchor the trunk and canopy that reached into the sky. A single storm had not felled the tree, but a series of things contributed to its demise. Rain and wind from previous storms softened the earth around the tree's root system. The resulting erosion stripped away the soil and created cavities that weakened its foundation. A culminating storm moved in, and the soil was soaked by the rain. The tree was buffeted by the wind. The roots proved to be insufficient supports, and the tree tumbled. Looking at the roots of a blown down tree, they appear to be a tangle of wooden web that once crawled underneath the surface of the ground. The roots were broad and twisted together to form a foundation to hold the tree that now lays on its side. They spread out broadly from beneath the tree, but they had not grown deeply into the ground, and lacking depth to anchor itself, the tree was doomed to the external forces that toppled it. I witnessed the most vivid illustration of this lesson while hiking on a Wyoming portion of the Continental Divide Trail. It took this experience to really appreciate the lesson of broad, shallow roots failing to hold tall trees during storms. My brother and I traveled to Pinedale, Wyoming to hike a circular route from the Big Sandy Trailhead to the Big Sandy Lake, through Jackass Pass and Texas Pass, across the front of the Circle of the Towers, and to a junction with the Continental Divide Trail, which led us back to where we started the trek. Rangers had told us that a windstorm had come through a few weeks earlier, blowing down a lot of trees. Perhaps that's why the area is known as the Wind River Range. On the morning that we were leaving the trailhead, a group of trail maintainers were heading out to continue their cleanup efforts. And several things struck me about this group. First, they were all young. They appeared to be in their early 20s, with a couple of 30-year-old veterans included in the mix. Second, they were young men and women. The drive to care for the trail crosses genders. Third, they were all volunteers. These were not professionals or National Park Service employees. Finally, they were carrying all the gear they would need to do the work ahead. These were wilderness areas, so they had no vehicles and no power tools. Cross saws, axes, machetes, ropes, and an assortment of tools were strapped across their bodies, along with their backpacks with food and sleeping gear to remain out on the trail as they worked. These young folks thanked us for hiking the area and cautioned us to be safe. We thanked them for their selflessness and the great work they were doing for the trail and our benefit. I was amazed by their attitudes. Rick and I struck out across a fairly flat stretch of trail toward Sandy Lake, where we would spend our first night. This section would go alongside the river and through a pine and spruce forest. Normally this would have taken about 4 hours to hike, but we had been warned to plan on it demanding much more time due to the trail being blocked by trees blown down by the storm. As we hiked along the path, the river flowed over smooth rocks on the right side of the trail. On the left side, amazing views of the Teton Mountains peeked through the spruce trees. In front of us, there were signs of the past storm. Taken all together, it was beyond anything I'd ever seen. Breathtaking beauty. We weren't hindered by blown down trees for the next couple of days. Much of the time was spent above the tree line as we transited Jackass Pass and Texas Pass. Each one took us to elevations of well over 10,000 feet. Tired but thrilled to experience everything, we camped with the Cirque of the Towers as our backyard. On the final day of this adventure, we walked by several glacial lakes until we came to the trail's junction with the Continental Divide Trail. Following the CDT, we soon entered a pine and spruce forest once again. Here we were shocked to discover the devastation of the storm that so many had warned us about. We made our way around several huge spruce trees that spread out on their sides and blocked the path. It was challenging but passable. And without warning, we discovered the epicenter of destruction. Trees stretched across far out on each side of the trail. They were stacked on top of one another, 20 feet high. It was a formidable obstacle. We worked our way through a 2-mile section of this wreckage, climbing over or walking far off the path to get around the trees slowed our progress. Then, when we didn't think things could get worse, the trees were so densely packed together that we couldn't see our way over or around. Rick went to the right, I went to the left. We were in search of an opening. We both found ourselves crawling under the trunks that lay prone in front of us. I had to take off my backpack and push it ahead of me and crawl toward little openings that revealed themselves as I drew near. Eventually, we both made it through at about the same time, and calling to one another, we were soon reunited. It was intimidating for me. My experience with the Appalachian Trail was different. Trees had fallen, but the maintenance teamwork was evident. There were places where freshly cut wooden carcasses lined each side of the trail, but the path was clear. The trail is so dense in places that it's affectionately called the Green Tunnel by hikers. This is especially true in the Smoky Mountain portion of the trail. It was here that a variant of the lesson of shallow roots was revealed to me. The main learning point, warning of limitations of shallow roots, was as true in the Smokies as anywhere. However, a corollary of that important maxim is equally proper. Fallen trees serve an important role in the ecosystem of the forest. These trees have many names. Sometimes they're referred to as snag or snag trees. However, I've heard them called life trees, and I like that much more. These trees continue to serve life-giving purposes to the forest. Rabbits, squirrels, birds, even bats use the downed trees for home and food storage. Bugs and fungi feed on the decaying wood. As I walked toward the top of Klingman's Dome, bright green moss covered the tree trunks that lay scattered alongside the path. All things have value, during their lives and even after. Sometimes the greatest value may be pointing others forward along the path. Perhaps there's even hope for me.
I'm wondering if you'd come wandering my way. If you ever get lost, or if the trail leads you astray, the music of the pack can always bring you back. I wonder, can we wander away? And I'll spread the word and you beat the drum. Round up the troops and get the gang to come, and we'll leave the streets in these neighborhoods